Hello, everyone. My name is Russell for the Fallout from Dishonor podcast. It is Monday, September 20th. And before I get into the main stuff, the chaos, the dark side of the ring, Ric Flair shit, before I get into the chaos, a couple things. Reason that we didn't do a main podcast last weekend, in case you didn't know, I had some personal stuff going on. I'm not going to get into that. Also, September 11th is a little bit of a touchy subject for me for the same reasons it's a issue for everyone else, but also September 11th was my grandpa, my mom's dad, was his birthday. We were really close when I was younger, so it was an off weekend, and then again some personal stuff on top of that happened. Not going to get into that. Before I get into everything, the YouTube contest, all you got to do is go to the Wrestling Geek interview on the YouTube channel, leave a comment for the video for the podcast, and you'll be entered to win a signed Samoa Joe NXT card. So, with all of that out of the way, dark side of the ring. I had toyed around with the idea of doing a dark side of the ring review in the middle or late last week with all the chaos surrounding this particular episode, and probably going forward, I'm just going to jam it into the main podcast. All things being fair, apart from the chaos surrounding this episode, kind of a light news week as far as wrestling goes, at least what we've been used to in the last month or two. But Dark Side of the Ring, Episode 1, Season 3B. This was a mess. So this particular episode, as probably everyone who listens to this is already aware, was about the plane ride from hell, specifically the plane ride from hell from 2002. Keep that in mind when you're reading about this, when you're listening to me, when you're listening to other podcasters, when you're listening to anyone speak about this. The year is extremely important with this particular plane situation. There's been a few different plane rides from hell as far as the WWE is concerned. But plane ride from hell was the subject matter. People that were interviewed for this were Jim Ross, Rob Van Dam, Terry Runnels, Just Incredible, referee Mike Chioda. He came off like a fucking chode. Tommy Dreamer, Heidi Doyle, Sean Waltman. I think I've got them all listed. If you don't know who Heidi Doyle is, if you haven't seen this, go back and watch this before you listen to me talk about this fucking train wreck. As far as the parameters around this, back in 2002, WWE did they call it a European tour. It was just a few days, but a tour is a tour, I guess. A tour is mostly anything more than a day. So on May 1st, they were in Germany. May 2nd, they were in Glasgow, Scotland. And on May 3rd, they were in Birmingham, England, which was also the Insurrection pay-per-view. All of this information I got from a website called onlineworldofwrestling.com. Also, they noted that this entire tour, apart from Triple H, I believe, was an all Raw crew situation. Which, again, as far as the plane ride from hell stuff goes, there's a story going around that this was the same flight that Kurt Angle and Vince McMahon got in a tussle. I don't remember if that was the year before, the year after this. I have to do a little bit more, have to read up. But again, they've done this kind of shit before. That didn't happen. Kurt Angle was a SmackDown guy for most of his run after the brand split. and he wasn't on that plane. Not this particular year, anyway. But in the following days, May 5th, WWE chartered a private, I thought it was a 747. I've read since I watched this that it was a 757, so I might be mistaken. They might have gotten it wrong. I'm not really sure. But they chartered the flight. As flights sometimes do, there was a weather delay, I believe it was. This particular one led to a 7-hour delay. Wrestlers being wrestlers, of course. There was an open bar, and the passengers on this particular flight would end up going through 3 airline carts of alcohol before the plane even took off, which is fucking insane. I guess it's important to note, leading up to all this, a quick recap. The year before, ECW and WCW had been bought out by WWE. We went through the whole alliance storyline stuff, which probably the less said about that, the better. Later that fall, we got the return of Ric Flair. The beginning of the following year, we would get the return of the NWO, Hall, Nash, and Hogan. And then we had WrestleMania, The Rock and Hogan, I believe, Triple H and Chris Jericho, both of those matches at WrestleMania. And then leading into the summer, we had Hogan win back the title, Backlash, and then the following month at Judgment Day, Taker took it off him. And I do believe that possibly, like within a week or two after that, is when this tour happened. Triple H, I believe, was supposedly advertised for this tour. He was the only one, I believe, from SmackDown that, well, at the time, technically from SmackDown, that was on this plane because he was already advertised for the tour. I've heard conflicting things about whether or not Taker was on here. They had mentioned in the episode itself that he was, but not a lot was mentioned about him except for the very beginning, I believe. Little important note there. But got all these guys from WCW, made their return, and chaos ensued. Interesting interviews. I'm going to run through this in no particular order. Other podcasters they made notes as they watched it. I didn't do that. I watched it in its entirety, was shocked out of my goddamn mind, watched it a second time, and just made some notes afterwards. So, in no particular order, Terry Runnels, the main reason that she was in here was to talk about the plane ride from hell, as everyone did. She brought up the Brock Lesnar stuff that happened at the pay-per-view, which was before the plane ride. I believe it was the night of the pay-per-view. Evidently, Brock Lesnar exposed himself to her. Goldust, Dustin Runnels, her ex-husband, she saw him afterwards, and he told her don't sell it, and don't selling it would be a common theme throughout this entire story. Another important note about Terry Runnels, there was an incident while they were on the plane with her ex-husband, Dustin Runnels, singing Pleading My Love over the PA to her. He was shit-faced. And he was probably, morally speaking, one of the better people on this flight. Again, interviewed Terry Runnels. They interviewed RVD. Him and Jim Ross probably came off in this better than most. I don't think anyone... Honestly, everyone involved in this kind of came off as a jackass. There's not a lot positive to say about anyone that was actually involved in this. RVD's situation, I'll give the guy props. He really wasn't involved in a lot of the chaos as far as this plane ride goes, but he came off a little showmanship at the beginning, especially. He still did the whole, my name is Rob Van Dam, with the finger pointing. Mike Chioda, he came off as Mike Chioda came off as a jackass. There's no other way to put it in this. Obviously, he was interviewed. He had brought up flight attendants, the way that they were used and abused in the 80s and 90s by the wrestlers, and just laughed in really awkward places in this. I do kind of wonder a little bit. So, if you've watched documentaries before, not even necessarily this, but any documentary, there's been a lot of documentaries in the past where there have been controversies after they're done, after they're put together, after the fact, people that were involved in it made to look like jackasses, and they'll complain about it afterwards. I kind of wonder if this in particular, maybe this wasn't chopped up and reordered to make it look bad. This guy in particular, you didn't really have to do that with, though. He did a pretty good job of making himself come off like an asshole, laughing at anything and everything that he thought was funny and inappropriate. Some of the more disgusting things, I guess you can give him a pass with a few things. There was some stuff that was pretty funny, I guess. The stuff with Michael Hayes and X-Pac and him getting his ponytail cut off. The Bradshaw stuff. Honestly, Bradshaw probably came off a little bit better than most people in this documentary, and he wasn't even in it as far as the interviews go. The stuff with Michael Hayes hitting Bradshaw, and then Bradshaw just stood up, apparently didn't even fist up and hit him, but just open hand slapped him and knocked Hayes the fuck out. Anyway, yeah, Mike Chioda, total jackass in this. Sean Waltman and Justin Credible. Sean Waltman was in this verbally a little bit. I do believe that he was actually interviewed for this. They had some verbiage from Scott Hall later, and I don't know that was actually shot for this. That might have been something that was lifted from something else, maybe another documentary about this. I'm not really sure. But Justin Credible didn't come off too horrible in this. Kind of the same role as Rob Van Dam, just kind of recapping what he witnessed. Jim Ross. So, I often talk about Jim Ross's commentary on AEW and how he just seems irritated with some of the things. Irritated with the way wrestlers are just constantly doing dives, no-selling everything, not tagging in and out, lucha rules when there is no lucha rules, taking jabs at the referees when they don't enforce stuff, that kind of stuff. Take that, Jim Ross, turn him up to 20, and that's what you got here. Jim Ross seemed rather pissed and disgusted about the fact that he even had to talk about this. He did not seem happy about this at all. That brings us to Heidi Doyle. From here on, at least until we get to the Tommy Dreamer stuff, the next two people kind of intertwine, so they'll just get brought up when they get brought up. Heidi Doyle, in case you're not familiar with, was one of the flight attendants on the Plane Ride from Hell, the private jet that was chartered. The other, I'm sure there were other flight attendants. The other flight attendant of interest was named Tarlin Capelina, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm probably butchering that last name. I'll call her Tarlin. Uh, Heidi Doyle, immediately when she started, at the very beginning of this, when she started being interviewed, she looked extremely uncomfortable. I wasn't sure going into this who they might have gotten as far as the flight attendants goes. Going into this, I knew probably 90% of this stuff already. A lot of us podcasters and wrestling aficionados, historians, whatever the hell you want to call them, depending on who it is, knew a lot of this stuff. It was nothing new. WWE made a cartoon about this and had it up until actually, I believe Peacock just ripped that thing down. So if you're looking for that, probably find it on YouTube or something. But Heidi Doyle, one of the flight attendants, was interviewed. She seemed extremely uncomfortable through most of this. There was the stuff with Dustin that I brought up earlier about the singing. He overtook the PA and did it over the PA. She had to wait for him to pass out to basically get the PA speaker, the radio microphone thing, to get that back. There was some other things that she was involved in, but the big thing that everyone is talking about is the controversy with Ric Flair. Now, it's important to note that while he and Brock Lesnar were not involved in this at all, the documentary, as far as the episode, as far as that goes, but Ric Flair has denied everything that's mentioned here numerous times. There is an interview with Renee Paquette. I believe she had Ric Flair on her podcast here. I don't want to say recently. It's definitely been, I believe, since he was released or whatever the hell happened with WWE. My girlfriend brought up a really good point, actually, while we were watching it. She's wondering, and now I am, if WWE didn't see this coming and decided that they just wanted to get him out of the way before this shit went down. And there's been rumors that Tony Khan may have wanted to hire him. If I'm Tony Khan and Ric Flair are supposedly really good friends from what I've read and what I've seen with interviews and stuff. If I'm Tony Khan, if he's insistent on bringing Ric Flair in, minimum 6 months. But if I'm Tony Khan, not that you would ever listen to this, if you have to bring Ric Flair in, I suggest bring him in as a one-shot for a Four Horsemen reunion. You could do it with him, Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard. When that doesn't go over very well, at that point, you can say it was a one-off, and you can just be done with it after that. Doesn't need to be anything else. I don't think it's a good idea to do business with him at all after this. But if you're insistent on it, do it as a one-shot first to test the waters. I think you'll find out that it's not a very good idea at all. Anyway, the Ric Flair stuff. His main role in this was getting shit-faced, stripping naked, putting his robe on, and doing helicopter spins with his dick. There's been a shitload of helicopter dick jokes all over, up and down, Facebook groups, Twitter, everywhere. And I suppose if it were just that, it would be pretty hilarious, but it didn't stop there. Ric Flair would corner Heidi Doyle in the galley, I guess it's called. I've never been on an airplane. It's apparently where they keep the food and drink. There was some verbiage exchanged, I guess, and he forced Heidi Doyle to touch his helicopter. So I brought up that I had probably known about 90% of this documentary. I remember reading that Ric Flair had stripped down and was in his robe. I may have even read something about a sexual incident. I'm not entirely sure if I knew before this specifically what this is. This all sounded familiar except for that particular tidbit right there. But, of course, Twitter is up in arms about this. The cancel Ric Flair is up in full force. If you want my opinion, I don't think WWE or AEW should touch Ric Flair with a 10-foot pole after this. Certainly, if you have to do business with him, not anytime soon. He might be able to get a little bit of work down south in Mexico. I don't know really what the promotions down there like earlier. There's some of them, AAA and CMLL have done business with some somewhat shady characters in the past, so maybe he can get work down there. But as far as the States and Canada, maybe even Europe go, Ric Flair after this might be blackballed as much as Marty Scurll is. Which is really unfortunate to think about. That's the thing with Marty Scurll wasn't and isn't Ric Flair, so who knows? It'll be interesting to see what happens. I mentioned Twitter. There's a huge divide with some people saying that this chalking it up all to boys will be boys and everyone knew everything about this. Speaking of the everything, everyone knew everything about this. I haven't checked the YouTube replay in the last, probably since Friday. But as far as the everyone knew everything about this already thing, Raw this past Monday did 1,670,000 viewers average. The rating for this show, which was the lowest rated Dark Side of the Ring in history, did 153,000 viewers. Now, last I saw, the YouTube replay was up to 200,000 or 300,000, and it just seems to be climbing and climbing. I'm sure it'll get even crazier as word keeps rolling about this. I'm sure as far as YouTube goes, you're getting people watching that don't kind of have anything to do with watching modern wrestling. But that's kind of my point. This past Raw was fucking abysmal in the ratings, and it still did 10 times what this episode of Dark Side of the Ring does. And all those people saying that everyone knew about this already, wrestling nerds like me knew the majority of this already. But I wouldn't go so far as to say that everyone knew this. You've got casual viewers. I don't know how many casual viewers are left. It seems like as the years go on, less and less people are watching wrestling, so I don't know how many casual viewers are left, but you definitely have some, as is demonstrated by the large gap in ratings between these shows. But anyway, you have the divide like I was talking about. Some people, boys will be boys, everyone already knew about this. And then you have the other side of the coin where everyone is calling for Ric Flair's head. Some people I've even seen on Twitter want him arrested for this. I'm not defending this. There is no defending this. This is fucking awful and has been for the past 20 years. It's getting a lot more attention now than maybe it even did shortly after it happened. But that doesn't change how terrible this is. I wouldn't try to brush it off as boys will be boys. The wrestling industry was a god-awful place back in the day, and it has changed for the better, but you can't just talk it up to boys will be boys. That's fucking stupid. There's, guys, whether you knew about this or not, there's no defending this. There just isn't. That brings us to Tommy Dreamer. So with Dreamer, I feel like I should bring this up. Fair is fair. Again, like I brought up earlier, I don't know what kind of editing may or may not have been done. However, all that said, Tommy Dreamer came off worse than anyone not named Ric Flair. And at least as far as terrible as Ric Flair came off, at least he wasn't involved in this. Tommy Dreamer, I don't know if Tommy Dreamer was on the plane ride from hell or not. The way he was talking, it doesn't seem like I remember him specifically saying he had been on there. And like I said, the people that may or may not have been on this have been rotating in social media. I've read a lot of people like Jonathan Coachman claiming to have been on the flight. I don't actually believe he was on it. There seems to be some controversy. I just got done listening to the newest Jim Cornette podcast, and he did an interview with one of the producers. And now they're actually investigating whether or not Vince McMahon was actually on this plane or not. There seems to be a little bit of divide about that now. So that's being looked into. Tommy Dreamer, whether you love him or whether you hate him, Tommy Dreamer, you came off like a complete asshole in this. I just don't understand why this man would have made these. I thought Tommy Dreamer before this was a really smart person. Apparently, I'm fucking wrong. Some of the shit that he said was mentally painful to listen to. And I'm not even talking about sitting there and being verbally like offended by what he was saying. My biggest gripe with this, I sat there and listened to him and kept thinking, you know what this is about, you know what kind of attention something is gonna get. And the way he was, it seemed like he might have been trying to take some of the heat off of Ric Flair. The manner in which he was doing that, it was going to come off ridiculous to most people regardless, whether he just tried to take some of the heat off him or tried to take a bullet for him. I'm not sure which one, but he just... God damn, Tommy. How could you fucking be this stupid? Really. It makes my fucking head hurt to even be talking about this right now. I guess it is important to note a couple of consequences since this thing has come out. Tommy Dreamer has been indefinitely suspended from Impact Wrestling. There seems to be a little bit of a divide as far as what's going to happen here, what people think. I think if Tommy Dreamer ends up coming back to Impact Wrestling, it won't be anytime soon. I know he issued an apology, I believe, on Twitter at some point on either Saturday or Sunday. I mean, how could you not? He came off like a fucking idiot in this. If he had doubled down on the things he said, no one would have wanted to touch him with a 10-foot pole. I think that Impact Wrestling will probably leave him suspended for a few weeks. Here's how this is going to work. If Impact Wrestling plans on bringing him back, they will leave him indefinitely suspended for a very long time, few months, and then quietly bring him back and hope it doesn't get too much media coverage. I think in the next few weeks, you're probably going to learn that Impact Wrestling has come to terms with the release of one Tommy Dreamer. Tommy, I hoped you saved your money, is all I have to say. I hate to criticize someone like that, because the dirt sheets and the wrestling internet news shit that I'm a part of now, it's a love-hate relationship as far as I'm concerned. I love the information. I hate the way some of these sites and podcasters cover it. And now I feel like I probably more than at any other time am a stereotypical wrestling podcaster throwing verbal rocks and jousting with something like this. But my God, Tommy in particular, you in particular, came off like a fucking moron. Again, though, for what it's worth, he has issued a public apology. I don't have the exact Twitter quote sitting in front of me. I'm not going to bother looking it up. You guys can look it up if you want. And Ric Flair has the Car Shield commercials. Car Shield has suspended their ad campaign with Ric Flair. They're going to investigate this, and pending an investigation, they're going to decide what they're doing going forward. Car Shield is not a wrestling company. Future, down the road, 6 months, a year or two, I could see how a wrestling company might see some type of value with bringing in Ric Flair. Car Shield, Ric Flair is just a celebrity they're using as in an ad campaign. If I'm Car Shield, I just wash my hands of the situation and go and find someone else. I don't know if you're insistent on doing it with a wrestler. I don't know who else you get. I mean, I suppose you could do Hogan. The stuff with the sex tape and the racial slurs has happened, years ago. That kind of stuff has sort of cooled off. He doesn't get the reaction when he does show up for these Legends events. He does not get the reaction from the crowd that he used to. So I don't want to say that people have forgotten about it, but the major heat has worn off. Now, if I'm Car Shield, jumping from Ric Flair to Hulk Hogan is actually a really stupid idea. That will get some attention. But again, if I'm Car Shield, I just wash my hands of this. It sucks for Ric Flair. I know his financials are fucked off. I don't have the numbers in front of me. I have read that his alimony payments are fucking outrageous. That's what happens when you get married more times than you can count on one hand. I believe it's either 6 or 7. I don't have that exact number sitting in front of me. I don't like quoting statistics like that and possibly being wrong. So that's my stuff as far as the Plain Red from Hell goes. Let's get into some stuff that's not as crazy. Some of this stuff bleeds into last week. Again, I didn't do a main podcast. I did cover NXT 2.0. That should be in the main feed, actually right behind this episode, so you can go check that out. I highly encourage that. NXT 2.0, very mixed bag, in my opinion. There was some really good stuff. There was some not so good stuff. So go ahead and listen to that. So getting into other news items, a lot of which are a lot more positive than this, I could be sitting here with a brand new list of WWE releases, and it would still be more positive than what I just read. So, per Sean Ross Sapp at Fightful, Kevin Owens' contract, to clarify the situation, and I'm quoting this, to clarify the situation on WWE contracts, as reported initially, WWE was fully aware of Kevin Owens' deal expiring in January of 2022. Evidently, WWE, as we already know, renegotiated a ton of contracts right before the pandemic. Kevin Owens evidently was initially slated to his deal was slated to expire, I believe, in 2022, but much later in the year. And for whatever reason, in the negotiations, his deal was slated to end in 2022. I thought it was important to bring up the WWE. This isn't something that came out of left field with them, because there seems to be a little bit of confusion about wrestlers' contracts. Evidently, again, according to Fightful, most of the contracts that have thrown them for a curveball have been NXT related. I'm not sure if that is oversight from Triple H's reign over NXT. Maybe they're using this as, a reason to kind of take over NXT. It definitely felt like this past NXT was very much Bruce and Vince. So, yeah, definitely a lot of confusion as far as the NXT contracts are concerned. Obviously, there was Malachi Black and his 30-day no-compete instead of it being a 90-day like everyone assumed, which is why him debuting in AEW was so great, in my opinion. Adam Cole, and actually Pete Dunne's deals supposedly expiring in January, both of them. I'm not sure how accurate that Pete Dunne report is. I got to dig into that a little bit more. I did read a report from Fightful that WWE has offered him a new contract. There's no indication whether he has signed or whether he has rejected it, and I believe that report was from last week at some point. So yeah, there was some reports that Pete Dunne and Adam Cole were expiring around the same time. Obviously, Adam Cole signed an extension so that he could continue the feud with Kyle O'Reilly, and then that. Good job on his part, but I don't really know what the hell is going on with Pete Dunne. Gonna just keep rolling around with the contract info. Get into some ROH contract stuff, the kind of stuff that you don't really hear from anyone else. So PCO did an interview on Sean Waltman's podcast. It dropped this past Wednesday, and there's a few notable things. They talked a little bit about his WWE run. For people that don't know and aren't aware, PCO actually wrestled in WWE, WWF at the time, as one of the Quebecers. He is Pierre. We talked about that. Talked about his ROH run, winning the ROH World Championship. His run with Danhausen so far. And there's another interesting story about a tryout in WWE that he had, I believe, back in, 05 or 06? Somewhere in there. I don't have it in my notes, unfortunately. A tryout match with Shawn Michaels that didn't go very well. So the big news item with the takeaway from this is that his ROH contract will be up on December 1st of this year. And as of right now, He has not signed a deal, and it doesn't sound like he intends to. There was a news website that said that he had given ROH his notice. Maybe I missed something. I was listening to this while I was at work, but I do not recall him saying that he had given ROH his notice. Feel free to email me or DM me on Twitter and correct me, but I don't recall hearing that. While we brought up Danhausen a second ago, Danhausen's contract is also up at some point this December, I believe. I don't know the exact date. I'm sure I'll do a little bit of research, see if I can't track that down. And we'll be seeing what happens with that. Now, as far as Danhausen and PCO goes and the expiring of their contract, personally, I would like to see them both re-sign with Ring of Honor. As far as PCO goes, so there's the one main story that he told about the WWE contract makes me think that WWE probably wouldn't be interested in him, at least not. It sounds like he still wants to wrestle. Sounds like he's still got something in the tank. If WWE were to hire him, maybe as a French commentator, or a backstage agent. Beyond that, I don't see them really wanting him in an in-ring capacity. There's, of course, AEW, and he did bring up that he's had talks with AEW, evidently shortly before he signed with Ring of Honor. So that might be on the table. I hate to say this. If he wasn't going to re-sign with Ring of Honor, I think the best place for him to go would unfortunately be Japan. The issue with that, of course, being that COVID. So maybe he should sign with Ring of Honor, do 1-year deals and just keep doing that until maybe he can go to Japan. If I were him, that's what I would be doing, but that's just my opinion. As far as Danhausen goes, I'd like to see him stay in Ring of Honor. He needs to stay as far away from WWE as physically possible. He does not need to bring that character anywhere near that company. They will either completely change him and give him an entirely different gimmick, or if they take that gimmick, they'd either want the copyright to his name, which I do believe he filed last year. They would either want the copyright to that name, or more likely they would just name him something completely different, which would be stupid. But I'd like to see him stay in Ring of Honor. In lieu of that, so the issue with AEW is I don't know where he fits. I don't know what you do with him. I suppose you could put him with the Dark Order. He doesn't really fit there. He doesn't really fit anywhere. And, I mean, you can have him as an island to himself. I think there's more to the character if you have him with a team. The thing about the Danhausen character is, especially in Ring of Honor, he's been kind of manipulating PCO and, to a lesser degree, Sledge, I believe his name is. So it's more interesting to have him around other wrestlers. Moving on to more contract stuff. Per Dave Meltzer, Adam Scheer, Braun Strowman, as most of you know him, has been in talks with Impact Wrestling. Important to note, as of right now, they're just talks. We don't know anything more than that. It's a little strange. A lot of people thought that if he was going to have a life outside of WWE, that he would immediately be going to AEW. Again, kind of like Danhausen, but on a much different scale. I don't see where Braun Strowman would fit over there. Which brings us to Bray Wyatt. Now, there's been some talk about Bray Wyatt also going to Impact Wrestling. a lot of people online seem to be assuming that he's going to go to AEW and join the Dark Order, and that's a possibility, but as far as the news websites go, they seem to be getting inside information that he is more in talks with Impact Wrestling. Again, we'll see where both of them go. Braun Strowman, sorry, I'm fiddling with my notes here. Braun Strowman's non-compete would have ended at the beginning of September, I believe. Meltzer had said in the same report that he talked about Braun Strowman that most of the WWE releases, anyone that would be joining Impact Wrestling, probably be doing it on the Bound for Glory pay-per-view. Now, whether that's actually debuting at the pay-per-view or a story leading up to it, that remains to be seen. No one's really signed with them, as far as I know. Bray Wyatt was released on July 31st. So he's actually still got a ways on his non-compete, if I'm not mistaken. I don't even know, after you get released, I don't know if you have to wait your whole contract to start negotiating, or if maybe you can do it in the last 30 days. I'm not really sure. Moving on from the contract comments, the actual wrestling shows. Apart from NXT, I didn't watch any WWE this week. All AEW and Ring of Honor. And I'm going to run through it kind of fast. We're running a little later than normal, and I'm getting tired, want to get to sleep. So, AEW Dynamite notes from this past Wednesday. CM Punk joined the commentary team pretty much right out of the gate. He came out, cult of personality, big pop, jumping in the crowd, goes to the commentary table. And then we got straight into Adam Cole and Kazarian. Not a ton to note here. It's kind of funny. Both of these shows I don't have a ton of notes for, and that's because they were really good. This was probably the best. This is the best episode of Dynamite maybe all year, in my opinion. I was really impressed with it. Adam Cole and Kazarian was a very good showing. Great match with the right outcome. Adam Cole winning. If it were me, I probably would have made the match a little shorter and had Adam Cole go over a little bit more dominantly, maybe a little less back and forth, just because it was his first match in the company. I mean, I would say it's safe to say that anyone that really likes Adam Cole in AEW has probably seen him in Ring of Honor, maybe New Japan, and in NXT. So maybe you don't have to do that, but new guy, new company, I would have smashed him over a little bit better. Video package, the Lucha Bros accepted the Butcher and the Blades challenge for this past Friday's Rampage, which I do believe that the Lucha Bros won. MJF promo. MJF verbally butchered the crowd. Brian Pillman Jr. and Brian Pillman Sr. MJF promos are gold. That's just all there is to it. After that, there was a JR sit-down interview with Pillman Jr. This was decent. Got the point across. Also, obviously, we're getting Brian Pillman Jr. and MJF next week at the Arthur Ashe show. The Arthur Ashe show is going to be fucking spectacular. I'm sad that I have to watch it on DVR. I won't be able to watch it live. I'm going to have to stay the hell off the internet for that. I might even, maybe Thursday or Friday. No, because Dark Side of the Ring is Thursday. Well, maybe I'll record an independent review for AEW this week. We'll see what happens. Sit-down interview, and then Christian and Jurassic Express accepted the challenge from the Elite. A little bit weird. Jungle Boy was okay on the mic. Christian cutting him off was strange. I would have preferred that Jungle Boy get a little bit more time. He's not great on the mic, but he's also not going to get great if you don't let him do it. So that was a little strange. We're getting that match, I believe, I can't remember if that's going to be on next Wednesday or next Friday. One of the two. Oh, quick note, if for some reason you don't know. Next Friday's AEW Rampage is a 2-hour show. Kind of strange. I'll be interested. I don't usually quote ratings much, but I'll probably be taking a look at those and talking about them on the podcast, because I'm interested to see if they can hold through the entire night, going what I assume is going to be 10 to 12, or if the show just slowly falls off a cliff, which is kind of what I expect for a Friday night. Dante Martin and Matt Sydal versus FTR. So in the past, I haven't been big on Dante Martin. He is slowly beginning to win me over. I think he's got something. Crowd seemed really into this match. It was kind of what you'd expect. A lot of high-flying stuff on one side, a lot of mat and technical tag team stuff. FTR cutting the ring off like they're notorious for. And FTR got the win. Malachi Black promo after that. Malachi Black promo was weird. He came out, his entrance, badass as always. The Rosario Dawson stuff. So he had basically more or less pointed her out, I believe, and then she jumped the guardrail, kind of started like gesturing, some taunting. He got out of the ring, and then Cody ran through the crowd, which was really fucking strange, and stopped Malachi Black. Now, if it were me, again, I'm not a booker. I guess I'm at least trying to play the part of wrestling expert. But if it were me, I would have done this a little bit different. I would have had this mirror MJF's interaction with Brian Pillman's family from, I believe it was the Dynamite the week before. I would have had Malachi Black come out. I believe he made a comment about smelling a rat from the Nightmare family. Something to that effect. Those were definitely not the exact words, but something to that effect. Would have had him get out of the ring and keep talking to her as he's getting closer and closer to her. And then once he gets up to the rail, Cody, I probably would have had him run down the ramp. Having him run through the crowd was strange because So I know I'm probably thinking about this a little too hard, but what sense does it make that he was either in the crowd or in any part of the building that he would have been in the crowd to have to run down and then attack Malachi Black from there? It made a lot more sense if he was in the back. If you didn't want to go that far, you could have had Cody sitting next to Rosario Dawson. You could have had him sitting a few rows back from Rosario Dawson. You could have had him sitting in the crowd somewhere. That's not really what they did here. So I believe he ran from one of the areas where you'd go back and go get concessions and stuff, bathroom and whatnot. So there was that. That was strange. We are getting Malachi Black and Cody next week at the Arthur Ashe show. Important thing to note, I believe Friday is being taped after Dynamite, so that'll be interesting. I do believe that Cody and Malachi is scheduled for Dynamite, if I'm not mistaken. If I get any of that wrong, I apologize. Malachi Black should go over. Dan Lambert promo brought out a new female named Paige. I believe she has some UFC or MMA experience. Haven't done a ton of research on her. Kind of interested to see where that goes. AEW's women's roster is the one thing that they've always had trouble with. So, they've got Thunder Rosa now signed. They got Ruby Soho. Hopefully they can keep building on that division. As Tony Khan builds up the women's division, it's my opinion that he needs to start getting rid of people that are already under contract. There are women that we don't see on TV very often. Maybe they get used on Dark a lot or Elevation. I don't watch either one of those. But there are some people that he could do away with as he's hiring new people, which is something he's going to have to do soon. Dan Lambert promo, Chris Jericho came out. This interaction was good. It was okay. Not a ton to say about it. Jade Cargill versus Layla Hirsch. Okay. Not great. Not a ton to talk about. Wasn't super long. I probably would have made it shorter. Jade goes over. After the match, Punk got jumped at the broadcast table by Hook and Hobbs. Taz was there. And that table spot looked brutal. He got lifted up. An attempt at throwing him through the table. It didn't work. He just hit the table, and the table kind of rolled over, and he rolled off of it. Excalibur did try to cover a little bit. I mentioned he called it a specific type of table. I can't remember exactly what, but that looked a little rough. Darby Allin and Shawn Spears. Allin got his ass whipped before the match started. Shawn threw him in the ring. It started. Darby Allin was the winner of this match. The match itself really wasn't a lot to talk about. The main thing with this match was the after-match beatdown. FTR, Spears, and Tully wiping off their face paint, I guess, is a sign of disrespect. After that, we got the Bryan Danielson and Omega segment. So this was possibly my favorite segment of the whole night. I was at this point that I'd realized that we hadn't had any Young Bucks at all. Which may be one of the reasons I enjoyed this show so much. Great back and forth. The more Don Callis can talk and Kenny Omega doesn't, the better, in my opinion. Danielson's obsessed with the word shit a lot more than I thought he was. Swearing in general, apparently. He goaded Kenny Omega into accepting his challenge. So next Wednesday, I believe in the main event spot, we're going to have Kenny Omega and Bryan Danielson non-title. Very important to note that for anyone that's watching the rankings and knows that he's not anywhere near that championship yet. I suppose if he won, that would probably shoot him up the ladder pretty hard. I'm not expecting that, but the main event for the evening was Moxley and Kingston versus 2.0. This was nothing special. It was a missable main event. Again, the aftermath, Suzuki and Archer showed up and would give Kingston and Eddie Kingston and Moxley, goddamn, would give them an after-match beatdown to close out the show. So obviously, I don't know if those two teams are scheduled for Archer Ash or not. I can't remember. If they aren't, they should be. Overall, a spectacular Dynamite. This was really great, and these are the kind of... So it's really weird. This was good and solid. The show before this was extremely schizophrenic and didn't make any sense. What's sticking out in my mind about that show was Sammy Guevara coming out and doing his little sign thing where it goes to picture-in-picture, and he's doing the sign thing where, you know, you're sitting in there and you're reading them. And then when they went into full commercial and then came back, and he was gone. And there was no reason for him to come to the ring, apparently. Ring of Honor TV this week, a little bit, this is going to get ran through real fast because this was completely pure based. You guys know I have a hard time calling pure wrestling, and this was what this was mostly was a pure wrestling gauntlet. Started out with Eric Martin and world famous Cheeseburger. Cheeseburger would get the submission. Yes, I'm calling him Cheeseburger, not CB. If he ever hears me say this, he'll probably beat my ass. After that, Delirious came out. Delirious would tap CB, Cheeseburger out. LSG would come out, submit Delirious, then Joe Keys. LSG would get the pinfall, and then Brian Johnson, oh, sorry, my voice is going to hell, would come out and cheat in various ways, using a closed fist, which he was admonished about, and then using the ropes as leverage to get the pinfall. I think there was one other thing too, but he won the pure gauntlet. Brett Titus versus Mike Bennett. This went to a time limit split decision, which Mike Bennett would take. That was really interesting to watch. Again, I ran through that kind of fast, just gave you the results. I want to at least do that with Ring of Honor TV. I'm going to get out of here. I'm extremely tired. I got to get to sleep so I can get to work later today, but that's been the show. Again, Samoa Joe signed NXT card contest. Go to the YouTube channel, look up that interview, leave a question for the show in the comments. Other than that, like the show if you like it. Leave a review on either Podbean or Apple Podcast if you enjoyed the show. If you didn't enjoy the show, feel free to message me on Twitter or Facebook and tell me what I did wrong. On that note, I'm out of here. Follow me on Twitter, follow me on Instagram, follow me on Facebook page, YouTube, all that crap, and I will talk to you guys later in the week.